London, Rain and Business. No one loved mornings in London more than me, Private Detective Alex Riley, because mornings here always smell of coffee, cigarettes, and cases that are best not remembered over breakfast. Max came in, sitting by the window, flipping through the newspaper, pretending to look for the weather forecast. In reality, he was reading scraps of news, like a criminal reading an escape plan. "Have you ever been to Egypt, Max?" I asked, keeping my eyes on the photos scattered on the table. "Only in my dreams, where I was losing to a camel at chess," he replied without a shadow of a smile. There was a postcard on the table, heavy paper signed in ink, Karnak, a luxury steamship on the Nile, and below that, a name, Lynette Ridgway Doyle. An heiress, millions, and a threat. Direct. There was a letter attached to the card, handwritten, stamped by a Mayfair law firm. It asked him to accompany Mrs. Ridgway Doyle on her wedding cruise as a private security consultant. "Do you think we should intervene?" Max asked. I nodded, because if someone wastes ink and a stamp on threats, then they're not kidding. Chapter 2, Aswan. The ship and the dolls. The steamer Karnak stood at the wharf like a gilded corpse. Everything about her was too smooth, too white, as if someone had tried to disguise the chaos. I came aboard in a gray raincoat that had seen more business than a British court. Max followed with a suitcase that contained more notebooks than clothes. We were met by the cruise manager, a man with a face like a bank receipt, everything in place but nothing superfluous. He knew who we were and he knew why we were there. Inside our faces, rich, oily, smiling, everyone was hiding something, especially those who were trying to look calm. "Who's the customer?" Max whispered. "Lynette, officially. And unofficially, someone who can already smell death," I answered. There she was, Lynette, beautiful as a jewelry store window, eyes that reflected the shore, money, and maybe fear. Simon Doyle next door, husband, the shine of shoes. But there's a click inside, like a trap. And in the distance, Jacqueline, ex-girlfriend, ex-fiance, the real problem, staring at Lynette like a cat at a crystal mouse. Max and I exchanged glances. "I bet a bottle of whiskey that this story ends with a gunshot." "Or two," Max said. "And below us is the Nile, calm, like he's faking it." Aswan. The ship and the dolls. The steamer Karnak stood at the wharf like a gilded corpse. Everything about her was too smooth, too white, as if someone had tried to disguise the chaos. I came aboard in a gray raincoat that had seen more business than a British court. Max followed with a suitcase that contained more notebooks than clothes. We were met by the cruise manager, a man with a face like a bank receipt, everything in place but nothing superfluous. He knew who we were and he knew why we were there. Lynette Ridgway Doyle appeared almost at once. She didn't walk, she glided as if she were on a stage instead of a deck. Her beauty was as flawless as a debt-free bank statement. But in her eyes, something trembled. "Mr. Riley," she said, "thank you for coming. I'm not sure I'm going to need you, but I feel better." "Peace of mind is a rare commodity," I replied, "but we know how to deliver it." Simon Doyle was at his side, a strained smile, a handshake, like a check. He didn't like strange men around his wife, especially men who might notice more than they should. Max was already scanning the passengers with his gaze. There were a pink lady with an accent and a ring that glowed in the night, A doctor who looked at people like they were x-rays. A young colonel with a gait like a landmine under his foot. And, of course, Jacqueline. In red, lips like a flare. She wasn't hiding. On the contrary, she was staring. At Lynette, Simon, at us. Is she following you? I asked Lynette later, when Max had gone to look around the deck. Yes, she whispered. Every day. She says she won't forgive, and I believe her. I nodded, because I knew a woman who says she won't forgive isn't threatening. She's promising. We moved on. The ship sailed quietly, like a secret from the lips of a witness, and beneath us, the Nile, calm, as if he knew there was a storm ahead. Shadows in the sun. The steamship Karnak was like a jewelry store window, beautiful, but with a double bottom. On the surface, gloss, champagne, rustling dresses, lazy conversations under lampshades. Inside, tension that you could cut with a butter knife. Every corner was like a stage. Every passenger was an actor. But the play we were in had no script, or one person had one. The dining room smelled of expensive tobacco and spicy tea. The music played in a low voice, as if afraid to say too much. They sat at a long table. Mrs. Van Schuyler, an American widow with diamonds on her knuckles and a voice like a prosecutor. She said little, but she looked as if she knew more about you than you did. Dr. Bessner, a German with a face like an apothecary's jar, cold, glassy, but with an intelligence that flowed out of him in every word. Colonel Race, British, uniform in the closet, army in the back, spoke short, as if every word was a shot. Saloma Otterborn, a novelist whose life was more interesting than books, alcohol in her breath, passion in her gestures, and a daughter, Rosalie, as quiet as a cat under the sofa. Andrew Pennington, Lynette's lawyer, an American with a broker's smile and hands that were always counting something. Max was sitting by the window. He was drinking tea and drawing faces in his notebook. He was an observer, but not a passive one. He noticed not what was on the surface, but what was hidden in the pauses. I wandered around the deck. The wooden railings were polished as if pearls had been rolled on them. The wind brought smells, saffron from the kitchen, sweat from the lower deck, anxiety everywhere. Simon and Lynette were side by side like two halves of a magazine cover, but there was a crack between them, imperceptible but growing. Do you think she's really dangerous? Simon asked when Lynette stepped back. I think any threat that's being whispered about is too late to stop, I said. There was a reception in the evening. Champagne, lights, conversation. Everyone was trying too hard to be themselves. And that's the first sign that someone's playing. Jacqueline was the last to arrive. In a dress, the color of blood, and with a smile like a blade. She didn't say anything, just raised her glass toward Lynette. No words, no toast, just a look. No one slept that night, though the lights in the cabins were out. At dawn, I woke up to a scream. The ship rocked. Max was already at the door. There's a commotion on deck, panic, voices like gunshots. I squeezed through the crowd. Lynette Ridgway Doyle was dead. There's a dot on her temple, clear, round. The bullet had entered like a thought that could never be expelled. There's a glass on the nightstand, undrinkable, and a poker card. Ace of spades. Max looked at me. It's not just jealousy, he said. I nodded. It's a play, and Act 1 is over. The morning was alien. It was as if someone had painted the sky a different shade. Lynette's body was covered with a white sheet, but the marble of her face still peeked through. Cold beauty, now dead. The room smelled of perfume and death. I looked at her the way one looks at a broken vase, not out of pity, but out of a sense that there was no going back. Max stood in the corner, writing it down. Not words, not numbers, feelings. His handwriting was always closer to music than to text. There's a glass mark on the table, fingerprints, and ashes. Someone was smoking, someone was nervous, or remembering how to kill beautifully. We interviewed everyone, one at a time. Downstairs, in the bar, where the music wasn't playing, but shadows danced across the walls. Jacqueline de Belfort. I was in my quarters. I have witnesses who, a bottle of rum and an old grudge. She looked straight ahead, no hiding, but there was a tremor in her voice. Not fear, a confidence that shrank into a lump. You threatened her, I said, number I promised. The difference is the timing. Simon Doyle. We had a fight. She left. I drank. I fell asleep. I woke up screaming. Did someone know you had a revolver? Just her and me and maybe Jacqueline. He was holding on, but his eyes were running, as if looking for a way out of a scene he had built himself. Rosalie Otterborn. I heard footsteps. Too late. Maybe two. Maybe three. A woman's heels. Where were you going? Toward Lynette's quarters. And then silence. The tone is quiet, like rain on glass. She's not lying. Or she's lying in a way that makes you want to believe it. Colonel Reyes, that's not love, it's a calculation. Someone's been waiting for this moment. He gave no emotion, just facts. But there was anxiety in his voice. Old, military. Saloma Otterborn. I've been writing. Inspiration. Murder has always inspired me. Did you hear something? Just the muse. And she screamed too. Dr. Bessner, wounds clean, bullet straight. Killer knew what he was doing. He didn't flinch. He sounded like he'd done an autopsy before. And probably won't be the last. Everything was too perfect. It's too lined up. It's as if someone had staged death so that we wouldn't just find it, but feel it. Max looked at me. And we're not looking for who killed her, I replied. We're looking for who knew she was going to die. The Nile was outside the window. Cloudy, heavy. It reflected the face of the man who was still on board. The night came back like bad news. Slowly, with the flavor of a thunderstorm. The ship was at anchor, but inside, everything was moving. Glances, whispers, suspicions, they scurried between the cabins like rats on a sinking ship. I didn't sleep. Neither was Max. We laid everything out on the board, names, motives, connections. But the feeling was that we were not just in a dead end, but in a trap, built according to someone else's blueprints. Something doesn't add up, Max said. It was as if all the witnesses were reading the same script. I nodded, because I'd seen the same thing. Too clean, too slim. We decided to check out the lower deck, where it smelled of diesel and loneliness, where thoughts, not passengers, rest. There we found a cabin that wasn't on the plan. Doors unmarked, locks broken. It's dark inside. Only the faint light from the porthole. Who lived here? Max asked. I went inside. There's an ashtray on the table. There's a cigarette in it. Recently extinguished. The killer was smoking. Or watching. Or both. There's a photo on the wall. It's old. Lynette and Jacqueline, smiling. A time when death was somewhere far away. Next to it is a newspaper, French, about politics, about war, and one article about a murder in Lyon, too close to the sailing date. This is not a random passenger, I said. It's someone who's been hiding among us. We went upstairs, but as we walked, there was a scream. Female, sharp as a blow on glass. We rushed up. Simon Doyle is in one of the cabins. On the floor, wounded, bullet in the leg, blood all over the floor, face as white as a sheet. Who did it? I asked. He whispered, Jacqueline, she was in the hallway. I told her to leave. Then, the flash, the pain, everything. Jacqueline was found in a bar, drunk, shivering, gun by her side, in tears, in shock. I didn't mean to. I was scared. But what I saw in her eyes was not fear. I saw error, like her plan had cracked, but not yet fallen apart. Do you believe her? Max asked later. I believe that someone wants us to believe one thing too much, which means we need to look the other way. The ship was standing, but the event was not. And somewhere on board was someone who didn't make mistakes. Chapter 6, Hunting in a Confined Space. When the ship is closed like a trap, the hunt becomes a matter of psychology. Not running, but chess. It's not catching up. It's guessing. Max paced the deck as if his footprints were not on the wood, but in the air. I watched the passengers. Everyone became a suspect. And a suspect is just a witness who hasn't broken yet. Simon Doyle was in the infirmary. His leg was bandaged. He could talk, but his answers were one syllable. The smile was gone. All that was left was fear, or calculation, or both. The killer knew the route, Max said, knew the schedule, knew who was where and with whom. So either one of our own, I nodded, or someone who's been pretending to be one of our own for a long time. The morning began with a missing person. Pennington's file is missing. It contains documents related to Lynette's estate, a will, company shares, key papers. Pennington was nervous, sweating, licked his lips, talking fast. I didn't, I swear. But the papers, they're gone. It could have been anyone. I looked at him. He wasn't lying, but he was afraid. And fear is a bad ally on a cruise where every move becomes evidence. The next target is Mrs. Van Schuyler. Her companion, Miss Bowers, reported jewelry missing from the safe, only jewelry that could be easily hidden. Gold, diamonds, trinkets, in her opinion. Condition hours. The cabin is a mess, but it's not gross. It's staged, as if stealing wasn't the goal, but a distraction. Someone wants us to look the other way, I said to Max. He nodded, or so that we don't notice that the real goal is near. Dr. Bessner provided a report. Simon could shoot himself in the foot. Painful as hell, but possible. And he had motive. Jacqueline was silent, lying in the cabin as if underwater. She said nothing, just stared at the ceiling as if it held the answer. Do you think she set the whole thing up? Max asked. I think she set up the beginning, but she doesn't control the ending. I didn't sleep at night. I looked at the map of the route. I looked at the shadows on the walls and tried to piece together a portrait of the killer from the shards of other people's lives. There was a knock on the door from someone. Letter. Unsigned. Inside is one sentence. She knew who to trust. A mistake cost her her life. I squeezed the paper, 'cause I realized the killer doesn't just know, he's running the game, and we're just catching up. The morning came in gray. Despite the sun tearing through the sky, shadow reigned inside the ship. Max stood at the window, smoking. The smoke billowed like thoughts you don't want to exhale. I twirled the letter in my hands like a knife that had been lying idle for too long. She knew who to trust, I repeated out loud. Someone in her circle, then. Someone she wouldn't suspect. Or who she wanted to forgive, Max added, and that was a mistake. We decided to start with a detailed walkthrough of the cabins. Not to search, to observe. Sometimes the way a person puts things away says more than what they say in an interrogation. Dr. Bessner's quarters were sterile. Too sterile. Not a single extra piece of paper. Just neatly stacked preparations, notes in German, and a photo of the family. Too perfect means is hiding something. Pennington's room is like an accountant's office after a storm. Papers, books, an empty whiskey bottle, and a torn sheet. We put the pieces together. It was the draft power of attorney. Rewritten, with a new date, in favor of Simon. Pennington was trying to pull something, but he didn't have time, Max said. Or changed my mind, I added. Miss Bowers has a diary. Not hidden, on the contrary, deliberately left out. It contains entries about Mrs. Van Schuyler, her whims, her medications, and one strange note. If things go wrong, go to Luxor. They won't find me there. An escape plan is more than just a maid, Max remarked. Jacqueline barely moved. Her eyes were hazy, but there was a piece of paper on the table, half narrative, half confession. I couldn't forgive her, but I didn't want to die. It was out of control. If he's dead, it's my fault. If he's not, he's still playing. He? I glanced at Max. This isn't about Lynette anymore. It's about Simon? He shrugged, but his eyes said maybe. During the night, someone tried to break into Simon's room. Max caught a glimpse. A figure in black. Small, fast, got away. On the floor, all that was left was a note. The final mistake is closer than you think. Max and I were silent. Because sometimes the most high-profile murders happen where everyone's already quiet. And we felt that the next death was on its way. Chapter 8. The Face Behind the Mask. The next morning, the sun came out before we did, but the light didn't make its way into any of the cabins, for it became cold on board, not from the weather, but from the truth that was coming. I was up before dawn. Max was already making coffee. The same coffee, strong as a sentence. We were silent, but there were more words in that silence than in the court transcript. He's near, Max said. I can feel it. I nodded. He's not just around, he's playing, and he's preparing the finale. We decided to go out into the passenger cabin. There we usually drank tea, complained about the weather, and pretended not to watch each other's every move. Today is different. Today the passengers were like caged animals. They looked at us as if we knew more, and we did know, or thought we did. Saloma Otterborn. The writer was acting strangely. Her gaze was sharp, as if she had just learned something that could not be written down. I want to talk, she said, in private. We met in the reading room. It smelled of paper and time. She spoke quickly, intermittently. I saw something last night, someone coming out of the cabin. But that That's impossible. That man, he couldn't have been there. He was with you. Who? I asked. She bit her lip, said the name. I didn't believe it. Max didn't either, because it was one of the innocent ones. Are you sure? Absolutely. I have eyesight like an owl, but I have a worse memory. That's why I write down novels, so I don't forget. She got out. An hour later, she was found dead. A blow to the neck, quick, clean. Not the handwriting of someone who improvises. It's the handwriting of someone who's already rehearsed. Next to her notebook. It's open, but the page that could have been written on is torn out. It got too personal, Max said. I was looking out the window. Behind it, Neil, as indifferent as yesterday, as he's always been. He's not killing for Lynette. This isn't about her anymore. It's about control. It's about power. It's about a scenario where he's the author. We went back to the cabin. I took the passenger list. I crossed off 3. Lynette's dead. Saloma is dead. One of them is dead, too. Just not in body yet. It's a mask. Max hesitated for a moment. What if it's not about the victim? What if it's about the viewer? I turned around slowly because I realized we weren't looking at a crime. We're looking at a one-man show. And the only question is, who is he? The bodies are carried away quickly, but their shadows remain. They follow you, whisper at night, reflect in the mirror when you are sure you are alone. Max sat at the map. He carved the path as if he were a surgeon on a live one. Every turn in the route, every stop, every night, is not just logistics. It's strategy. The killer didn't just pick his moment. He planned the route like a chess player. We're not moving down the Nile, he said. We are going by the script. It was then that I realized that we need someone who can read behind the words. Someone who doesn't just know people, but knows how they deceive themselves. Monsieur Fabien Dumont, an elderly Frenchman, a philosophy teacher, a former police psychologist, 60+ years old, gray hair that seemed gilded. He looked like a casual passenger, but there are no such things on ships where the dead leave ink marks. You want my opinion, Mr. Riley? He said, without raising his eyes from the chessboard. Are you sure you want to know what I think? Certainty is not our commodity. We work with probability. He grinned, played a pawn. Then he looked up. The killer isn't impulsive. He's building. But his biggest mistake isn't in his actions. It's ego. He can't help but leave a mark on us, because he wants us to know he's superior. Max asked, so he's not just getting revenge? Number. He's not retaliating, he's punishing. He creates a moral formula where everyone gets what they deserve, but he's the only one who sees the formula. Who's next? Fabian shrugged. I don't know, but I do know one thing. The killer is not playing against Lynette, not against us, but against someone who once rejected him. Someone who's on this ship. Someone who thought he'd forgotten. I froze, because it sounded like a mirror. That evening we found the second page of Salomon's notebook torn out, hidden in the air vent. It had words on it. This isn't the first time he's killed. I'm sure of it. He's had a handwriting before, and I've read it, in an old file, in London. There was a boy there, and his name was... The name was a blur, a drop of water, maybe a tear, or blood, or just an evil accident. Riley, Max said, you had a case about a teenager who was released on a mistrial, but you didn't believe he was innocent, did you? Yeah, in 2011. But he's gone, forever. Max sighed. Maybe he's back with us? I didn't answer because everything inside had already cracked. And if the killer isn't just here, but knows me, then the account is about to get personal. The night on board was starless, but that didn't stop the shadows from growing. They lived their lives, creeping along the walls, whispering in the corners. The ship was calm only on the outside. Inside, it was a storm. I was standing by the railing, smoking. Max was asleep for the first time in 3 days. He was exhausted. We both were, but I knew I couldn't stop now because silence is the perfect cover for the final act. Fabian Dumont came up to me. No knock, no words, only with a chess piece in his hand, a black king. I lost, Mr. Riley, but only because I didn't know the game was being played on a different field. What did you find out? He handed me a sheet, an old file, photocopy, newspaper clipping, headline, Young Witness Disappears After Acquittal in Family Murder Case. And a photo, black and white, a boy, eyes like knives. Is that him? Max asked, appearing behind me. Maybe. I don't recognize the face, but the handwriting, I recognize the handwriting on every note at a crime scene. I didn't get a chance to say anything. The alarm went off. There was a commotion on the lower deck. Panic. Someone was screaming, "They opened the safe. Weapons are gone." We rushed downstairs. The safe was indeed broken into. One gun, gone. All that's left is the paperwork. There's a card on the floor, a playing card, Jack of Hearts. It has writing on it, J for Justice, yours Arkansas. Max turned pale. It's your initials. I clenched my teeth because I realized the killer wasn't just playing around. He brings me to the stage. He wants me to realize that the ending is mine, or his, but not someone else's. We gathered everyone in the saloon. The ship has stopped. The crew is under control. All passengers are in range. He's the only one left. The ghost, a shadow, a boy from the past. Fabian stood in front of them. He spoke softly, but every word was like blow on glass. One of you kills, not out of fear. It's out of habit, not out of jealousy, but out of a sense of duty. Pause. He looked at me. Riley, this man is not just a killer. He's your double. He's doing what you wouldn't let yourself do. He's avenging the world that refused to hear him. And now he's forcing you all to listen. I realized time was up, and the next step would be my last. It was a cold morning. London, February, gray city, gray coats, gray people. And I'm Alex Riley. Not a detective then, just an investigator in the juvenile department. Too honest to give up and too stubborn to stay out of trouble. The case came in a brown folder. On the cover, there are only initials. RK, a boy of 14. Parents found dead. Stabbed. No sign of forced entry. He was at home. The only survivor. He said he was asleep. The name, I remembered it right away. Not because of the sound, it was the look. He didn't cry. He didn't tremble. He didn't defend himself. He looked at us as if he had already seen it all. The trial, psychologists, prison, the escape. And the silence afterward, I couldn't prove his guilt at the time. All the evidence was circumstantial. He didn't snap. He didn't give up. He memorized his role by heart. We didn't find a weapon, no motive, just a strange note in his notebook. Pain is what binds. Without pain, they'd still be gone. A psychologist diagnosed him as sociopathic but not dangerous. The court released him, custody. 2 months later, he disappeared. Disappeared from all the databases, all the archives, like he'd vanished. But I knew they don't disappear, they come back. When you're least prepared. Now, in 2025, I'm standing aboard a steamship, and I can feel the past catching up with me because the handwriting in the notes is the same. The wording, the vocabulary, the cold poetry of revenge. I pulled an old photo from the archives. I accidentally put it in my wallet before I left. Subconscious or a premonition? Max walked over, silently, looked at the photo. Is that him? I think so, but I can't prove it. The face has changed, but the eyes haven't. Max exhaled. If it's him, then everything on board is his stage and we're his audience. I press my lips together. Not just the audience. One of us is a hero. One of us is the anti-hero. It's just a question of who's going to outplay who. And somewhere in the darkness of the ship, among the shadows and gold, he, that same boy, was already preparing to take the next step. Chapter 12. When everything becomes a mirror, coming back to the present was like a slap in the face. It was sharp, wet, and smelled of salt air. I stood on the stern, smoking, and staring at the reflection in the window. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't recognize myself. Max was there, didn't speak, just stood there. He knew when silence was the best way to be supportive. I know who he is, I said at last, but I don't know how to find him. He became someone else, but he's still himself. Max nodded. He's doing everything he can to make you remember, to make you feel. He doesn't just kill, he brings it back. We went to a meeting at the salon. This time on my initiative, I wanted to see the faces, their reactions, their masks. Everyone was there. Pennington is as sweaty as an accountant before an audit. Miss Bowers, tense, hands folded as if praying. Rosalie is angry, tired. Jacqueline is washed, sober, a face like after confession, but not forgiven. Simon is grim, his arm is bandaged. The look is that of a man who no longer plays. We're nearing the end, I began, and if anyone thinks they can just wait for sure, they're wrong. The killer doesn't wait. He's taking them out, one by one. I went to the board. There are cards on it. Pictures, lines. In the center, a new word. Reflection. He doesn't just hunt, he creates reflections. Scenes that repeat themselves. Movements he saw as a child. It's not just revenge, it's rehearsal. Playing with the past we've forgotten. He hasn't. Max added, everyone who has died has a moral connection. Lynette is greed. Saloma, stupidity. Simon, greed. It's like a moral parable. I looked into everyone's eyes, and what I saw in them was not fear. I saw expectation, because everyone now knew they could be next, or was already in the game. No one slept that night. The crew was armed, the cabins were locked. But I knew that if he decided to strike, no key would save him. And on the table in my quarters was a new card, a playing card, the Queen of Clubs, and a note, the Queen played her part, now the King will fall. I clenched my fists, because I realized I was the next target. The next move. The morning was dead, as if the night hadn't gone away, but had just put on a mask. There was no wind, Only the sound of water against the side, like a clock counting down the last seconds. I sat in my quarters and went through all the cards, all the murders, all the memory streets this man had led me down. He didn't just follow, he was educating me. He trained me on his victims so that in the end, they'd clash like old enemies. Max walked in silently, a report in his hands. Pennington's room, found a draft, a letter, unsent. He was trying to warn someone, but not Lynette. He was writing to her. Jacqueline? Number the she in the letter is Saloma's daughter, Rosalie. I picked up the letter. It trembled in my fingers like it knew it was late. I thought I could cover, that I could handle it, but I didn't. Everything went wrong. He found us. I wanted to make things right. For her, for you, for everyone. But he overplayed his hand. I'm sorry. Max nodded. Pennington probably knew who he was, or at least suspected. We sat down in silence. We went over our versions. I could feel everything shrinking, like the room was getting smaller, less options, less movement. Everything's coming to a point. At noon, we gathered everyone on deck. The passengers were nervous. Everyone sensed that the end was near, but no one knew whose. We're almost there, I said. Not the route, the truth. Tonight we close the doors, but there's one game before that. I handed everyone a card, white, no writing, just a pen. Write the word you didn't say. We're not going to read aloud, but you have to do it. It's not for evidence, it's for you. Pause. Everyone was writing, slowly, like they were signing a confession or a will. Jacqueline with a trembling hand, Rosalie confidently, Simon frowning, Bowers disgusted, even Dr. Bessner dryly but without resistance. Thank you, I said, and now I was interrupted by a scream. Rosalie's cabin, there's blood. We rushed downstairs. It's chaos inside. A vase broken. The windows ajar. Blood drops on the floor, on the sheet, on the wall. Rosalie's gone. On the mirror is a new message written in lipstick. S is for silence, and she broke it. Max exhaled. He knew about the letter. He knew about everything. I turned back to him. Number. He didn't just know. He planned the whole thing. This isn't revenge. This is cleansing. His judgment, his ceremony. And now we're in the finals. But who will be the final witness? The cabin smelled of blood and perfume. Rosalie was gone, without a trace, only hints, a message on the mirror, and a void that couldn't be filled. Max was silent. He didn't know what to say. No one did. Everyone was waiting for me to say something. I was waiting for a sign from him, the one who started it all. But the killer was silent, which means he was preparing the finale. I was sitting in the parlor. Next to me, everything. The board, the threads, the photos, the cards, everything we'd put together. A puzzle that was missing one, the most important, the centerpiece. Fabian walked in, slowly. He looked older than he had 2 days ago. Tiredness settled like dust on his face. Are you still hoping you'll catch him with logic? Number. Now, I'm hoping to catch him in pain. He sat down across from me. He interlocked his fingers. You do realize this is personal? I nodded. I knew him. For 2011, I didn't save him. I didn't stop him. I just let him go. And now he's not coming back for revenge. He's coming back to show me what he's learned. Fabian sighed. You're his teacher, Alex. But what you didn't know was that you gave him knowledge not of justice, but of power. In the evening, we gathered everyone in the dining room. There was food on the table, but no one was eating. The tension could have been cut with a knife, and someone would definitely use it. Rosalie's missing, I began. Someone here knows where she is, or what happened to her. Simon stood up. We're all puppets here, and he's the puppeteer. If you want the truth, look outside of us. Look higher, to the deck, the sky. He's already higher than that. Bowers jumped up. What are you talking about? This is all because of you, because of your greed. Lynette, she wanted to give it all to herself. You were afraid she'd take it all. She's already dead, Simon whispered. I'm still alive, for now, but not for long. Max tugged at my sleeve. Message. S is for silence. She knew something. Something she said. I nodded, and he wanted us to think he was punishing us for it. But maybe it was a scene, an act. Is she still here? We rushed into the maintenance room. It's an old storage bay. Not many people looked in there. And there, in the dark, we found her. Rosalie, unconscious, tied up, alive. There's an inscription on her wrist. Spared, for now. Max was trembling. I was trembling because he decided not to kill, which means he left the finale for me. Explanation time. I sat by Rosalie's bedside. She was asleep, serene as if the last 3 days had been a bad dream. Dry blood in the corner of her mouth, the rope marks on her wrists, but she's alive. Max brought water. He put it down silently. We didn't speak. We didn't need words anymore. We'd reached the point where explaining would only delay the inevitable. He's playing with us, Max said at last. But why you? I shook my head. Because I didn't save him, because I left him in that room, because I'm the first person who should have seen it and I didn't. Fabian walked in. Without warning, he looked calm, too calm. She will live, he said, looking at Rosalie. But you know that's not the end of it? I stood up. I know where he is. He wants me to come. Where? Max asked. I took the map. I showed the point, an old observation platform aft, in the shadows, far from the searchlights. He chose a spot where he could see the whole ship, like a stage, and as an auditorium, the finale will be there. Max nodded. I'll go with you. Number alone, it's his plan. And if I don't show up, he'll do it his way. And this way, maybe we'll have a chance. Fabian touched my shoulder. You don't have to be a hero, Alex. Sometimes winning is just about surviving. I looked at him. It's not about winning anymore. It's about the score. He wants a final, and I'm gonna give it to him. Night. Quiet. Like the night before a storm. I walked the deck, slowly, like walking on glass. Each step like an echo of the past. On a platform silhouette, tall, in the shadows. He didn't move until I got close. You came, he said. His voice was like an icy whisper. You wanted it, I replied. He turned around. The light hit his face. Young, calm, unfamiliar, and yet painfully familiar. You forgot me, Alex, but I remembered you. Every day, every step, I learned from you. And now it's my time to teach. I didn't draw my weapon, neither did he. We stood there like old actors, ready to play the finale, but not knowing if there would be applause. Why now? Why Lynette, Simon, Solomon? He grinned. Because they're like you, watching, judging, but they don't save. I just showed them the consequences. And for you, I'll show you the truth. He took a step. I didn't back down. The end is near, Alex, but you won't die. Number, you'll live. To remember. To see me every night, like you did back in 2011. I looked into his eyes. And for the first time, I didn't see a monster. It's that boy. Chapter 16. The Theater of Endings. He was standing across from me. Face clear, eyes calm, no fear, no anger, just something more. Something I couldn't even explain in a report. You didn't come here to arrest, he said. You came here to understand. I didn't argue. Because he was right. You planned the whole thing, down to the details, to the final scene. He nodded. Because you've always been a director, Alex. You just didn't know it. You let me go in 2011. But you left a question unanswered. And I grew up with an answer. I stepped closer. I could hear his breath working. Infrequent, almost restrained. Why did you let Rosalie live? Why didn't you finish her off? Because she's the only one who wasn't looking up, who understood, who wasn't afraid for herself, but for others. I left her. He took a step toward it, lightly, like a dance, like a step on a chessboard. And you, Alex, you I can't kill, 'cause you're me. Silence. I drew my gun, slowly, not threatening. I just showed you. It's your final, I said, not ours. He grinned. Then shoot. But know this, you won't stop the idea. Because I'm not alone. Because I am the result. All of it. All of you. All of you who have forgotten that behind the facts are people, behind the evidence are fates. I looked into his eyes and I saw emptiness. Not angry, not dead, just empty, like a room that everyone had left. I lowered my weapon. Do you have a name? He shook his head. I only have a letter. And you know it. He took a step back and disappeared into the shadows. We searched the ship until dawn, but he was gone. Not in the cabins, not on the decks, not on the list. It was like he didn't even exist. Max didn't ask, just stared, waiting for me to say something. I didn't say anything, just sat down at the board, added a new card. Z is for zero, for the moment it ended. And below that, handwritten, and I'm still here. Chapter 17. When everything comes to a standstill, after the figure in the shadows left, the ship froze. Literally. The captain gave the command to anchor off the nearest shore. The crew was silent. The passengers prayed. And I thought they asked who he was, where he was, why he hadn't been found. And I answered as best I could. Sometimes a person goes inward rather than outward. Max sat next to me. There was weariness in his gaze, but also clarity. He wasn't trying to get to the bottom of it. He knew the answers had come, but not in the form of prints and clues. The FBI arrived by helicopter, just like in the movies. Men in black, files, protocols. They looked at me like I was the star witness. Or a participant? I said everything I needed to say. Clearly, no emotion, just like the protocol. But not one word got them any closer to the killer, because he was already out of their jurisdiction, out of their language. He was in their memory. A week later, I was back in New York. My office was just as I'd left it. The coffee had cooled, the dust had settled, but the map on the wall was still intact. I walked over. Remove the last card. Z is for 0. Put it in the drawer. Closed it. Never opened it again. Max came in later. He was holding a box. In it was a file. Old, yellowed, title, RK case, closed 2011. Do you think we should open it? He asked. I shook my head. Not anymore. Everything we need is in our heads. The rest is noise. The next day, there was a strange incident in town. Not a murder, not a fire, just a disappearance. A man went out into the street, never came back. There's a card on the bench. A new alphabet begins. Max brought it to me. His face was white as chalk. Is that him? I was silent for a long time. Then I said, or someone who read, who watched, who understood. And then we realized this story is over, but its text is still being read, and that means it's still alive. I sat down at the table. I took out a notebook, and I wrote the title, A New Alphabet. The first letter is shadow. Max poured coffee. We weren't looking at each other. We were looking out the window. Somewhere beyond the skyscrapers among the lights, a new name was already forming. It's been 3 months. Summer in New York is like heat in hell, only with takeout coffee. I was coming back to life, slowly, like a man learning to walk after a fall. Every day, no cards, no messages without him. But one morning, a letter appeared on my desk. Unstamped, no return address. Only 2 letters on the envelope. R. I opened it. The paper was old. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but there was something painfully recognizable in every line. There were no threats. There was no confession. Just reflection. You were looking for a killer, Alex. You found yourself. Everyone who stands near death stares into it long enough one day to see his own reflection. I am not your enemy. I am your result. You built me by not stopping me once. And now you're going to become something for someone else yourself. For the next one. We are all links. A chain. And everyone thinks they're the last. But he's really the first. Signed at the bottom. RK. Again. Max came in a minute later. He saw the letter. Didn't ask. Just sat down next to it. We were drinking coffee. We looked out the window. The city was alive, making noise, screaming. And in that noise, I heard the silence again. The same silence that began with the letter A. Suddenly, I realized this story isn't over until someone says, that's enough. But today is not the day. Because I got the board out again. I cleared a space and pinned up the first card of the new case. It has one letter on it, N, and the inscription, not again, The End, London, Reign and Business. No one loved mornings in London more than me, Private Detective Alex Riley, because mornings here always smell of coffee, cigarettes, and cases that are best not remembered over breakfast. Max came in, sitting by the window, flipping through the newspaper, pretending to look for the weather forecast. In reality, he was reading scraps of news, like a criminal reading an escape plan. "Have you ever been to Egypt, Max?" I asked, keeping my eyes on the photos scattered on the table. "Only in my dreams, where I was losing to a camel at chess," he replied without a shadow of a smile. There was a postcard on the table, heavy paper signed in ink, Karnak, a luxury steamship on the Nile, and below that, a name, Lynette Ridgway Doyle. An heiress, millions, and a threat. Direct. There was a letter attached to the card, handwritten, stamped by a Mayfair law firm. It asked him to accompany Mrs. Ridgway Doyle on her wedding cruise as a private security consultant. "Do you think we should intervene?" Max asked. I nodded, because if someone wastes ink and a stamp on threats, then they're not kidding. Chapter 2, Aswan. The ship and the dolls. The steamer Karnak stood at the wharf like a gilded corpse. Everything about her was too smooth, too white, as if someone had tried to disguise the chaos. I came aboard in a gray raincoat that had seen more business than a British court. Max followed with a suitcase that contained more notebooks than clothes. We were met by the cruise manager, a man with a face like a bank receipt, everything in place but nothing superfluous. He knew who we were and he knew why we were there. Inside our faces, rich, oily, smiling, everyone was hiding something, especially those who were trying to look calm. "Who's the customer?" Max whispered. "Lynette, officially. And unofficially, someone who can already smell death," I answered. There she was, Lynette, beautiful as a jewelry store window, eyes that reflected the shore, money, and maybe fear. Simon Doyle next door, husband, the shine of shoes. But there's a click inside, like a trap. And in the distance, Jacqueline, ex-girlfriend, ex-fiance, the real problem, staring at Lynette like a cat at a crystal mouse. Max and I exchanged glances. "I bet a bottle of whiskey that this story ends with a gunshot." "Or two," Max said. And below us is the Nile, calm, like he's faking it. Aswan. The ship and the dolls. The steamer Karnak stood at the wharf like a gilded corpse. Everything about her was too smooth, too white, as if someone had tried to disguise the chaos. I came aboard in a gray raincoat that had seen more business than a British court. Max followed with a suitcase that contained more notebooks than clothes. We were met by the cruise manager, a man with a face like a bank receipt, everything in place but nothing superfluous. He knew who we were and he knew why we were there. Lynette Ridgway Doyle appeared almost at once. She didn't walk, she glided as if she were on a stage instead of a deck. Her beauty was as flawless as a debt-free bank statement. But in her eyes, something trembled. "Mr. Riley," she said, "thank you for coming. I'm not sure I'm going to need you, but I feel better." "Peace of mind is a rare commodity," I replied, "but we know how to deliver it." Simon Doyle was at his side, a strained smile, a handshake, like a check. He didn't like strange men around his wife, especially men who might notice more than they should. Max was already scanning the passengers with his gaze. There were a pink lady with an accent and a ring that glowed in the night, a doctor who looked at people like they were x-rays, a young colonel with a gait like a landmine under his foot, and, of course, Jacqueline, in red, lips like a flare. She wasn't hiding. On the contrary, she was staring at Lynette, Simon, at us. "Is she following you?" I asked Lynette later, when Max had gone to look around the deck. "Yes," she whispered. "Every day. She says she won't forgive, and I believe her." I nodded, because I knew a woman who says she won't forgive isn't threatening. She's promising. We moved on. The ship sailed quietly, like a secret from the lips of a witness, and beneath us, the Nile, calm, as if he knew there was a storm ahead. Shadows in the sun,